On this week's Vaticano, we follow Pope Francis on his one-day trip to the breathtaking Italian city of Florence, and through the rest of the week in which he ordains a new bishop and meets the President of Poland. Also, meet Courage, an international Catholic apostolate, reaching out to people with same-sex attraction. All this, plus Rome celebrates sacred music in an international festival, and unpublished sketches of the great Italian architect Bernini are released in a new book from the Vatican Library. Stay tuned for this and more. You're watching Vaticano. On November the 10th, Pope Francis embarked on a brief and intense trip to the north-central Italian cities of Prato and Florence. Occasion for his trip was the 5th National Ecclesiastical Convention, and the Pope used his stay also to meet with workers, the poor, and the sick. Pope Francis began his visit with a moment of prayer in the Cathedral of Prato. He prayed in the chapel of the Belt of Mary. The girdle of Thomas, or the Virgin's girdle, is a knotted textile cord that, according to tradition, was dropped by the Virgin Mary from the sky to St. Thomas the Apostle at the time of her Assumption. During his brief speech to the workers gathered, Pope Francis invited the people present to go out and evangelize without fear, as God has ordained every believer.
To go out means to risk. To go out means to risk, and there is no faith without risk. A faith that thinks of itself and is closed in a house is not faithful to the invitation of the Lord, who calls his own to initiative and to get involved, without fear.
Pope Francis then continued on to Florence, the art capital of Italy. Upon his arrival, he was greeted by Cardinal Angelo Bagnasco in the Cathedral of Holy Mary of the Flowers. In his speech, he called for an authentic new Christian humanism grounded in Christ, the theme of the convention.
Humility, detachment, and beatitude. These are the three characteristics which I want to present today for your meditation as a Christian humanism, which is born out of the humility of the children of God. And these elements are also for the Church in Italy today, which is united to walk together as an example of synodality, so important.
That afternoon, Pope Francis celebrated Mass in the city's soccer stadium.
Our joy is also to go against the current, to overcome current opinion that also today do not manage to see Jesus as a prophet and as a master.
Subsequently, he closed his one-day short trip to Tuscany's capital and returned to Rome. On Sunday, during his Angelus address, Pope Francis explained what it means to really love God.
To love God with all your heart means to trust Him, to trust in His providence, and to serve Him and the poorest brothers and sisters without expecting anything in return. Faced with the needs of others, we're called to deprive ourselves of essential things, not only the superfluous. We're called to give the necessary time, not only what remains extra. We're called to give immediately and unconditionally some of our talent, not after using it for our own purposes or our own group.
After the prayer, the Pope added a comment on a current issue reported by the media, the arrest of 2 people who were involved with the leaking of documents from within the Vatican.
I know that many of you have been upset by the news circulating in recent days concerning the Holy See's confidential documents that were taken and published. For this reason, I want to tell you, first of all, that stealing these documents was a crime. It's a deplorable act that does not help. Therefore, I wish to reassure you that this sad event certainly does not deter me from the reform project that we are carrying out, together with my advisors and with the support of all of you. Yes, with the support of the whole Church, because the Church renews itself with prayer and the daily holiness of each baptized person.
Pope Francis also received the Italian National Institute for Social Security in audience. It's Italy's main entity for paying pensions to Italian workers. In his speech to them, Pope Francis emphasized the importance of rest for workers.
Del giusto riposo dei figli di Dio, anche voi siete.
Also, you are in a certain way collaborators in the just repose of the children of God. In the multiplicity of the services that you give to society, many are of assisting and providing, and therefore you give the basis for repose that can be lived with an authentically human dimension, and can therefore become the possibility of a living encounter of God with others.
Di un incontro vivo con Dio e con gli altri.
And Pope Francis met in a private audience with the 2015 Nobel Peace Prize winners. The prize went to the Tunisian National Dialogue Quartet for its decisive contribution to the building of a true democracy in Tunisia in the wake of the so-called Jasmine Revolution of 2011. Pope Francis met with them for 15 minutes on November the 7th. During the meeting, Pope Francis said they accomplished their work with their hands and their hearts and praised the methodology that they use for dialogue and bringing stability to Tunisia. The Nobel laureates called Francis a man of peace and gave him an image of Mahatma Gandhi. The President of Poland, Andrzej Duda, visited Pope Francis in the Vatican. He was received formally by the Swiss Guard before he met Pope Francis in the Apostolic Palace. The two exchanged cordial words, and Duda gave an icon of Mary as a gift to the Supreme Pontiff. After their meeting, President Duda told Polish media that the Pope would be visiting Auschwitz and the Shrine of Our Lady of Częstochowa during his visit to Poland next summer for World Youth Day. On the anniversary day of the consecration of the first public church in the West, St. John Lateran, on November the 9th, Pope Francis celebrated a Mass with a bishop's ordination. Francis ordained Monsignor Angelo de Donatis, a bishop, in a solemn celebration, which was further adorned by the chant of the Sistine Chapel Choir. As is custom, the newly ordained bishop received the insignia of his new office: a ring, a mitre, and the pastoral staff to signify his office as shepherd. In his homily, Pope Francis urged him to be brave and patient as a leader of his flock. Being the Archcathedral of Rome, the seat of the Bishop of Rome, the Pope, and the oldest of the papal basilicas, the feast of the consecration of the Lateran Basilica is observed worldwide as a liturgical feast day.
During his weekly general audience on Wednesday, Pope Francis reminded families to turn off the TV, put down the smartphone, and be together at the dinner table.
Queridos hermanos y hermanas,
Dear brothers and sisters, in family life we learn about togetherness from a young age, which is very beautiful, and a virtue the family teaches us to share with the joy and blessings of life. The most evident sign is the family gathered around the household table, where they share not only food but also affections and both happy and sad events. This virtue builds a fundamental experience in the life of every person and is a sure thermometer to measure family relationships. A family that doesn't eat together or that does it with no dialogue is an unfamiliar family. We Christians have a special vocation to togetherness. Jesus didn't avoid eating with his friends, and he represented the kingdom of God as a joyful banquet. It was also in the context of a dinner where he gave the disciples his spiritual testament and instituted the Eucharist. And it's precisely in this Eucharistic celebration where the family, drawing on their own experience, opens itself to the grace of universal togetherness and a fraternity without borders, according to the heart of Christ, who gives his body and sheds his blood for the salvation of all.
y derrama su sangre por la salvación de todos.
Stay tuned. In a few moments, we'll see how Catholic Charities are working to eliminate AIDS. Welcome back. This is Vaticano.
The Synod of Bishops for the Family closed at the end of October. Over 300 cardinals, bishops and specialists gather to speak about everything family in the Catholic Church. The closing document mentions many elements of family life. One of them, in paragraph 76, is the experience of families that have members with homosexual tendencies or same-sex attraction. Just before the Synod, an international conference came to a close. Present were also Cardinal Robert Serra and Cardinal George Pell. The conference was hosted by Courage International and Ignatius Press and had one aim: to make the voice of those heard who suggest the pastoral answer to people with this experience.
They have a struggle, they have a difficulty, they have something that is not a small challenge for them often, but yet they trust very much in the grace of the gospel. And when we open our hearts to the grace of Christ and we have the power of the cross, joy is a promise that he makes to us. And we see that very much in our members. They don't vanquish the problem, they aren't cured of it, but they have the joy that Jesus promises to them.
Courage is an apostolate that works worldwide in over 15 countries to bring the Church's message to those that experience same-sex attraction.
The Church is precise in her approach to the question. She always distinguishes the person from the attraction, from the action. And in doing that, that three-part distinction, person, attraction, action, we never lose sight of the dignity of the person and their foundational identity as children of God, redeemed by Christ and beneficiaries of grace. That's the foundation of our dignity, and that's why we avoid certain terminology so that we never lose our attention on what makes a human being so beautiful.
People with homosexual tendencies were present at the conference as well. They discovered a chaste lifestyle as a way to fulfillment.
There are a lot of people out there in the gay life that are in pain. And it would be very helpful if Courage there's an organization called Courage International. I said I was a member of Courage. It would be very helpful for Courage to be promoted within the Church more broadly. Right now, it's very much a guerrilla marketing kind of a thing. We find a diocese that would welcome us, and we move in. But it would be helpful that Courage had a chapter in every parish. You know, it should be as common as the Knights of Columbus are in the United States, or the Order of Malta, or all of the other orders out there.
One of them actually was directly influenced by Mother Angelica, whom he saw on TV.
I'm not a young man. I lived an entire generation of that other life. I call it the gay lifestyle because it was a gay lifestyle. And I know that I came back to the Church, came back to God, more importantly, came back to God because hearing about Mother Angelica talk about God's incomparable love, his endless mercy, his forgiveness, how he's with us at all times. So it was the passion and compassion that I heard. But then when she started talking about truth, it was like, wow, this is where it's at.
Tied to Courage International is Encourage, an apostolate specifically designed for family members who need help with a sibling or child of theirs that has same-sex attraction. The gripping story of Paul and Rylene can be watched in the docu-film Desire of the Everlasting Hills, which is available for free online or can be ordered on DVD.
Here, at an impressive castle restaurant in Geneva, the not less impressive research report entitled "Ending HIV as a Public Health Threat" was presented to a remarkable group of experts, researchers and government representatives. The report by Caritas Internationalis and the Catholic HIV and AIDS Network demonstrates that faith-based organizations give witness of being exemplary, efficient and effective.
They're really working with people and not just thinking about the disease. There are also organizations that really work with the culture. of whether it's the town, the city, or the country in which people live. And it's so important because there's lots of different ways that we need to connect and make sure people are able to prevent themselves from getting HIV and getting the type of care that they need. And our faith-based organizations have been our steadfast partners in doing that over time.
We are here to share on research and documentation of the work that the church has been doing in different parts of Africa and the world, which has been for a long time ignored and which has kind of been bearing fruit.
The report also mentioned those organizations that provide financial support for equipment and research, and that they rely on faith-based organizations which have the trust of the people who are living with HIV/AIDS.
Therefore, for an organization like the Global Fund, it's very essential that we partner with Caritas and other organizations so that the programs in the countries are successful. And the report shows that it has really worked. It has really worked quite well for millions of people and has saved millions of lives.
One of the research coordinators of the report emphasized that the look at several exemplary faith-based programs revealed that all of them approached the fight against AIDS in a holistic way.
And that has led to some really outstanding, sometimes over 90% retention rates, when many public health systems are 50-60%. So we know how to treat this, we know how to keep people alive and keep people healthy, and I think we have a lot to offer the world and to show and to now to document what we've done.
Other organizations might be able to give people pills. But they need more than that. They need to feel the dignity of being children of God. They need to be assured that God is not punishing them in any way, because God does not punish people with an illness. And also that they're created in the image of God, and that they then need to live in a responsible way so that they could fulfill the commandments of God.
And while the group had good reasons to celebrate their report that marks a new chapter, namely the beginning of the end of AIDS, a major concern still remains.
Without substantial investment in the AIDS response, we're not going to achieve our targets. And there is an important piece in the UNAIDS strategy that articulates that we have to actually front-load investments in the AIDS response in order to achieve the targets that we've set for the next 5 years, because then we have this narrow window of opportunity to turn the epidemic around. If we can achieve the targets within the next 5 years, then we can actually end AIDS as a public health threat by 2030. But if we don't see the necessary investment in the next 5 years, then we will be living with the HIV response, and we will see a return to serious problems as similar to those we had in the 80s and 90s.
Thanks for watching. In a few moments, you'll be able to listen to the sounds of the International Sacred Music Festival in Rome. Welcome back. This is Vaticano. Last week, an extraordinary conversation took place, a talk between a Catholic and a Muslim. Vatican Archbishop Georg Ganswein and Cologne, Germany-born Muslim Navid Kermani discussed religion, beauty, dialogue of Christians and Muslims during a study meeting of the German Academy in Rome. Their chat also ranged to personal stories of faith. One of the ideas that was offered was this one.
In many places, churches seem to want to assimilate themselves to what they find in society and to chase the people, instead of offering what they have, the beauty, with the beauty of religion that attracts in itself. For example, a liturgy that is not something that one has to go to, but that offers something, at least where the form, the music and the ritual are being safeguarded. It is something where you can enjoy and where you can win something. So the church shouldn't follow the taste that is present, but pull people away from their everyday lives and give them the treasure that she has.
Navid Kermani has published a book about Christianity which won the 2015 Peace Book Prize in Germany and is a positive vision of Christianity from his Muslim perspective. Gian Lorenzo Bernini, the man who gave Rome a facelift in the Baroque period of the 1600s. His fingerprints are all over the art and architecture of Italy's capital. The colonnades of St. Peter's, the baldacchino over the main altar inside the Vatican Basilica, Piazza Navona with its Four Rivers fountain, all Bernini. These and many of his commissions came directly from the popes. Millions have seen his public work, but now we can get into his head through his sketches. A new book published by the Vatican's Apostolic Library shows hitherto unpublished drawings of the Baroque master. They show ideas from Bernini and his school also for never-realized works, including extravagant bases for obelisks, colonnades, and statues. For the very first time in history, this book seeks to provide in a single volume a glimpse of all of Bernini's drawings in the Vatican Library's possession.
Last week, the 14th edition of the International Festival of Sacred Music came to an end in Rome. It was the last of 10 concerts that began with a festive mass and performance in St. Peter's Basilica on October 28th. The last concert in the Basilica of St. Ignatius was a contemporary organ piece called the Toccata, played in the presence of the composer. For the organizers, it was essential that the composer be there in person.
Eine neue Art zu versuchen, junge Menschen.
It is for us a new way of trying to engage young people in our concerts with composers of our contemporary age, and Allievi has written a piece for organ, a toccata, for this festival.
Für dieses Festival. Und wir haben ihn dazu eingeladen, dass das bei uns.
And we invited him to perform this with us. The idea behind it is not just the music, but the general idea of getting more young people into the church.
Bewegen wollen, in die Kirche zu kommen. Und jedes Jahr haben wir.
Every year we have a variety of choirs and orchestras from all over the world that want to experience this festival here in Rome, and they give us their suggestions about the music, and we say yes or no to that.
Wir sagen dazu ja oder nein.
The idea of the music festival is to gather funds to restore priceless works of art in the center of the church, in Rome and in the Vatican.
In diesem Jahr und im nächsten Jahr werden wir
in this year and in the next year, we want to finish the last building part of St. Peter's Basilica, the so-called north side. And then in 2016, the month of December, or in 2017, we will begin the restoration of the beautiful dome of Michelangelo that crowns St. Peter's.
Auf St. Peter.
The concert also had ecumenical elements. A Japanese choir, along with its director, came to Rome to perform Gounod's Mass of Saint Cecile. For founder and president of the Sacred Music Foundation, Hans Albert Kurzial, a personal highlight was the interreligious character.
Das große Ereignis für mich war, zu sehen, wie Buddhisten und andere Religionen.
The great thing to see this year is how Buddhists and people of other religions have taken on our culture and have performed Gounod's Mass of Saint Cecile, Kyrie eleison, Gloria in excelsis Deo, Credo in unum sanctum Catholicam et Apostolicum. That was great. That was for me personally a very special moment.
Ganz persönlich ein ganz besonderer Moment.
Pope Francis called for an extraordinary Holy Year focused on mercy. Also, next year's festival will mirror this intention of the Pope.
Das nächste Jahr werden wir ein wunderschönes Festival.
In the next year, we will organize a festival within the Holy Year, and we'll put the whole festival within the theme of Misericordia. That means we will encourage the participants in our concerts to help those in the world that really need it.
Sich für die Bedürftigen dieser Welt einzusetzen.
Beautiful churches and beautiful music fused for an extraordinary spiritual and musical experience.